Okay, everyone behave. Okay. Okay. So there is a story, actually happened to my sister-in-law's grandparents. They moved from communist Russia to America. They ended up in Detroit, Michigan, and he was like a rabbi, or he came to do Jewish stuff. And they came to the city, to Detroit, and they said, "Okay, come be a Hebrew school teacher in our Hebrew school, like some Orthodox shul." So he came, and the first day, he said, in the morning we wake up, we say Moda Ani, we wash our hands, and we get dressed. When we get dressed, we put our right shoe on, then our left shoe, we tie our left shoe, then we tie our right shoe, so on. Now, when one of the kids came home from Hebrew school that day, the parent said, "Oh, what'd you learn?" He said, "Oh, we learned to tie our shoes." And the parent got really upset, and the parent went to the I guess the head of the shul, the head of the school, whatever it was. He was one of the wealthiest, and one of the biggest philanthropists of the shul. And he said, "You better fire that greenhorn teacher that just came from Europe. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's not teaching our kids Hebrew. He's just teaching our kids nonsense and blah, 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 blah." And so they had no choice because, I guess they had a lot of influence, and they fired him.
Oh. Wow.
Anyway.
Without even asking?
Well,
what happened?
This is what you did, and did you teach him this? And he said, "Yeah, this is what I taught him." But whatever it was, they didn't. They were like so scared of this wealthy guy, they didn't know what to say. So anyway, many years later, Rabbi Often was by this time he had his own shul in Detroit, and he was sitting in his office, and a very well-dressed gentleman came into the office, and he said, "Rabbi, this is for you." And he brought like a big check, and I want to ask you for forgiveness. And Rabbi asked him, like, "Who are you? What's this all about?" And he said, "Do you remember, when you first came to Detroit, the first job you had, you got fired right away?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "It was my fault. My son came from school, and he told me that, you were teaching him, so how to tie the shoes, and this is Moda Ani, and this and that, and I had you fired. But now, what happened? My son grew up without any Judaism. He ended up meeting a non-Jewish girl, wanted to marry her, and they were getting ready to go to the wedding, and his shoe untied, and he went to bend down to tie his shoe. And as he was tying his shoe, he remembered that one class in Hebrew school where the rabbi taught him that in Judaism, you even have a certain way to tie your shoes. And as he tied his shoes, he felt this like connection to Judaism, and he broke off, the wedding.
Oh, really?
I love it.
On the day of the wedding?
The day of the wedding, like right before the wedding. I don't know exactly. Yeah,
whatever it was.
It was like, it was the day of the wedding, actually. Yes. And so, right. So, there's another very similar story actually with my father-in-law. That's why I'm wondering if the two stories are mixed up. Like, hey, like the story sounds familiar. My father also had a story about, it was a little bit different. Okay. It was a very long story. We'll save it for another time, called Shabbos in the Gas Station. He ended up in this like reform or conservative, I think it was reform camp up in Northern California. And it was a whole crazy story what happened. But anyway, it made a huge impression on the kids, and they all sang all these like Jewish songs. One of the songs they sang is a fun camp song called "All the Animals That We Eat Must Chew Their Cud and Have Split Feet." Anyway, so this guy also, he was like getting ready to marry a non-Jewish girl. As they're walking up the steps to the court building, he, like, every step he walked up, he like heard another part of that song, and he realized he couldn't marry this now. So
Yeah.
very interesting. Anyway,
I hear stories like that.
So today we're going to talk about Jewish education, and I think, do you guys have in your book this this picture? Yes. Okay. So it's not online. So you guys, I hope I'm able to show this to you. There's a meme over here. 1 second. Okay. There's a meme. Let's see if we can. No, we can't get it in over here. But I'll read it to you. It says, it's a mother talking to a little small child, and says, "You're making it difficult for me to be the parent I always imagined I would be." Well, what is wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this approach? What do you have to say about this meme?
I said that to myself many times.
The child is probably asking questions.
Yeah, same with me. I was like, wow, I'm a different parent than I thought I'd be. It's true.
Right, but are you yelling at your kids?
Yeah.
Hey, you're supposed to behave the way that you're supposed to behave, so I could be
Yeah, I'm
who I
gonna
thought
say,
I
yeah.
was.
Well, yeah,
Oh, right.
Right?
Like
Or-
you'd say, I'm never gonna be
no
like,
adult pushes you to your limit the way a kid does, that's for sure.
Right, so, I mean,
23.
Okay, yeah.
right, it's not about the parent, it's not about you, it's about the child, right?
Right.
The approach to child, to raising your children and to education is, there's actually a very famous, saying, it's called Chanoch Lanar Al Pi Darko, educate the child according to his way, right? Each child learns differently, each child,
Right.
its approach is different in life, and right, if we just say, no, you're gonna do it my way or the highway, right, this is not going to work. Okay. So, we're gonna talk about that today. Okay, so, so between, Pesach and Shavuos, right?
Right.
There's something called Sfiras HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, and we count, every single day, like closer, from the second day of Pesach, the Shavuos we count every day. And it's a very special mitzvah because it sounds very interesting. So let's first understand what this is all about. Why are we counting towards Shavuos, which is the time that we receive the Torah on Mount Sinai? So text number 1. Want to read it, Anna?
And you shall count for yourselves from the morrow of the rest day, from the day you bring the Omer as a wave offering, 7 weeks, they shall be complete. You shall count until the day after the 7th week, namely the 50th day, on which you shall bring a new meal offering to God.
Okay, so this is what it says in the Torah, the actual mitzvah of the counting of the Omer. Text number 2, the Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch in the book of Jewish law is going to explain it. Second, text number 2. Okay, this thing is mixed up. Okay, Shelley, want to read it?
Sure. It is a biblical mitzvah for every Jew to count on a daily basis for 7 weeks, starting from when the Omer sacrifice is offered. The sages interpreted the words, count for yourselves. It might be thought that it is the Jewish court who conducts this count in the same way that the Jewish court counts the 7-year cycles and then sanctifies the 50th year as the Jubilee year. But count for yourself teaches us that every person must do the count. The congregation and the leaders are unable to count on behalf of the public.
Okay, so it's not like it's a group counting. It's not like they count and show every night and everyone's included, or like everyone counts the same count. Every person is required to count on their own. So let's say, for example, if you like a really good example of what it means that each person counts on their own, is that if you go to Australia in the middle of this time of the counting of the Omer, and Australia's a day ahead of us, right? So if you go to Australia, you yourself to count. You can't say, okay, we're up to this day because in Australia are a day ahead, so I just skip a day. No, if you're up to day 30 yesterday, today you have to count day 31. Even though when you're in Australia, people might be counting day 32.
So it's your time zone.
It's your personal count. So we all start at the same time, but you have to count your count.
So you don't count on the way over there on the plane when
Well,
you
so
change
you're
time zones.
you're losing a day. It's not that you're not counting.
Leave on Tuesday and arrive
Okay.
Thursday.
Right,
So you miss the whole of Wednesday.
right.
So that means you would observe.
Would you like me to make
How
Count your own
would you
24.
observe Yom Tov on a different day?
Yes, so if you only go one way, you celebrate Shavuot on a different day than the rest of Australia. Yes, very good.
Wow.
Yes, because Shavuot is the 50th day. So if you're only at day 49, it's not Shavuot for you.
Huge no.
Okay, so that's why you got to be really careful. Yeah, some people are careful about it. Anyway, so that's what I'm saying. It's a personal count. Each person on their own count. It's not like, okay, we're all counting the 7 years of Shemitah or whatever it is, whether you count it or not. Each person counts alone. Okay, so text number 3. This is a midrash. You want to read it?
I'm sure. Okay.
All
All right. She took my glasses. Why do we count the days between Pesach and Shavuos more so than any other festival? This can be compared to a prince who's riding and found a man who had been cast into a pit. The prince told him, I will put you out of the pit, and then after some time, I will give you my daughter as a wife. The man grew tremendously happy and said to himself, not only will he take me out of this pit, but he also wants to give me his daughter. And the prince told just that. And the prince did just that. He took the fellow out of the pit, dressed him in fine clothes, and gave him gold and silver. When the man saw that the prince was true to his word, he began to count how long it would be until the prince would fulfill his pledge to give him his daughter. The Jews in Egypt were as if in a pit.
Okay. So he
Yeah.
because Hashem actually took us out of Egypt. We got so excited. We know, hey, Hashem's going to give us the Torah. So we started to count the days. So what is so important about these in between days that even today, which, this happened many years ago, we're still counting those days. What's so important about the space between the two holidays? Why does it have its own blessing? Okay, so let's say if someone got married 20 years ago, right, and they had their time between their engagement and their wedding, they're not counting those days today. They were counting them back then, 20 years ago, before they got married. But who's saying, oh yeah, I remember 20 years ago today was the third day, since my engagement, and 20 years ago today was the fourth day since my engagement. We don't really kind of like most people kind of get over it,
Yeah,
so why do you do
This
that?
has nothing. Oh, sorry to interrupt. This is Yvette. This has nothing to do with the miscount because of the golden calf.
No.
What?
No.
No.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So another interesting thing is we don't say Shehiyanu, like, usually when you do a new mitzvah or special mitzvah, you say Shehiyanu. But here for the Sphira, we don't say a Shehiyanu. So it's not like it's totally its own, it's not like totally its own special mitzvah, right? Like you have, right? It's like you have a mitzvah, you're blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, there's a Shehiyanu. But the preparation towards Rosh Hashanah, right? There's a custom, they blow the shofar every day before Rosh Hashanah, there's no Shehiyanu, it's not its own mitzvah. So here too, so the Sphira is a mitzvah, but the main mitzvah is Shavuos or whatever is getting the Torah. But why? So there's no Shehiyanu. Why is there no Shehiyanu? So we're going to read text number 4 is going to explain that to us. So okay, read it, Sylvia. Okay.
We do not recite the Shehiyanu blessing when counting Sephara. The reason for counting 50 days is because God commanded us to count the 50 days from the Exodus from Egypt to the day we would receive the Torah as one who's waiting for a designated day when they're scheduled to receive a great gift or some other joyful thing. This person would hope and be anxious for that day to finally arrive. Every day when the sun sets, they count the days gone and bless Hashem that this day has passed and they're one day closer to an anticipated day. So too, God commanded us to count all the days and weeks leading up to the anticipated day, the day when the Torah would be given. The purpose of this is to increase our love for the Torah and to show how it is dearer to us even than the day we left Egypt. It is a primary day we anticipated. Accordingly, Sephira,
Sephira,
that's right, is about the upcoming goal, demonstrating how time is passing until we reach the day that Torah will be given. Each day we bless and praise God that another day has passed and brought us closer to receiving the Torah. Accordingly, how we can make the Shehiyanu blessing when counting the Sephira, when the desired day and primary cause of joy, Matan Torah. Matan
Torah, so giving of the Torah. Yeah.
Hasn't yet arrived. After all, we only recite Shehiyanu for a joyous occasion, whereas with Sephira, there is no joy. Thus, we don't recite the Shehiyanu blessing.
Okay, so all this counting is just a preparation for Shavuos. So on its own, we wouldn't just count it if there wasn't Shavuos. The only reason we're counting it is because of Shavuos. And this idea of preparation and doing something in anticipation of something is connected to the idea of education or raising children or Jewish education. Okay. Okay. So in Hebrew, the word chinuch, which means like a Torah education or like, you know, yeah. It doesn't just mean like school education, like learning in school, but just the whole idea of like becoming, you know, of a Jewish child, learning everything they need to know to become a Jewish adult. So this is an obligation in the Torah for specifically for the father, for the parents, okay? So children, they need to learn all the mitzvahs, right? You can't just wake up one day at 12 or 13, okay, now you're bar mitzvah, it's time for you to do everything. You have to have like this preparation or practice from before. So so that's what chinuch is. And the obligation, as we're going to read now, is on the parent as opposed to the child. So the child might not be obligated to do the mitzvah, but it's a parent's obligation to teach that child and to get that child to practice that mitzvah. And just like, right, you want to run for a race or something, you gotta practice first, even though that's not the race itself. Without that, all that prep before the race, before the marathon, you know, that leads you into being able to do a great job at the marathon. Okay, so text number 5. Eileen, are you able to read? Just to unmute.
Yes. Okay. The sages taught a minor who knows how to wave the lulav is obligated in the Torah of lulav. One who knows how to wrap himself in a garment is obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. If he knows to preserve the sanctity of tefillin in a state of cleanliness, his father buys him tefillin. If he knows how to speak, his father immediately teaches him Torah and Shema. What part of the Torah is taught to such a child? Rav Hamuna said, the verse, Moses commanded us Torah, an inheritance of the congregation of Jacob.
And that's
And
Torah Tzibah.
Shema is taught to such a child, the first verse of Shema.
Okay, so children should fulfill mitzvahs if they are able. That's what they're taught as soon as they're able. So like, it's a custom that a child, once they turn 3, let's say they got their hair cut because they're kind of can understand, and they start to wear tzitzis and make the bracha on the tzitzis, a boy. And a girl likes Shabbos candles because she knows how she can learn how to say the bracha. So although the kind of like the child doesn't have like a full obligation, it's really the father's obligation to make sure the child knows all these things. The child is not really mature enough to be obligated. It's not like required on them, but it's something that they need to get used to, practice, know, so they can do.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd follow their parents. I don't have children, but I figure like the age of 3, it's been, you know, every Friday night, mommy lights and daddy does this. So
Right.
they'd like to participate.
Not just participate, you have them do it also. You have them participate
You have
also.
yeah.
Right? You teach a young child to say a bracha. You can teach all these things it's all called chinuch. It's all called educating them, right?
Okay.
And just like it educates a child to say thank you or please or clean up after themselves.
Not in this generation.
Text number 6. Hannah, want to read it?
It is unanimous that a minor cannot discharge another person's obligation, even if they have reached a mature age. This is a correct ruling, for a mature minor is not obligated to fulfill any mitzvot, even by rabbinic standards. It is we who are obligated to educate the minor in mitzvah performance. Therefore, it doesn't make sense for a minor to discharge anyone else's obligation, even for a rabbinic mitzvah. For anyone who isn't obligated themselves cannot discharge someone else's obligation.
Okay, so discharge obligation means the Hebrew word like to be yotzei someone. Let's say someone makes kiddush. Right. So so if like my husband makes kiddush, everyone who's around can be included in his kiddush.
Yeah.
A minor, a child can't be yotzei, can't include an adult in his kiddush because he's not obligated. So if he's not obligated himself, how could he like include someone else in his mitzvah, count someone else into his mitzvah? Okay. And what we mean by obligate, one of the things we mean by obligate is he can't get punished if he doesn't do that mitzvah, if he does it wrong. I'm saying there's nothing nothing obligating to do that. So okay, so if a child didn't learn when they were young, when their parents didn't teach them, they didn't get the chinuch they were supposed to get. Once they are an adult, they have the obligation upon themselves to teach it to themselves, to learn about it themselves. And that is 7a. Shelley, you want to read it?
Sure. One is obligated to hire a teacher for one's son, while one is not required to undertake any expense to teach a colleague's son. A person who was not instructed by his father is obligated to arrange for his own instruction when he can understand, as the verse states, and you shall study them and take heed to perform them.
Okay, and then you can read 7b. This is an addition said to by the third Chabad Rebbe, that's Tzemach Tzedek.
Okay, inasmuch as the father is scripturally obligated to teach his son Torah, it may be suggested that a scriptural obligation lies on the minor as well.
Okay, so a child, once they're old enough and they're mature enough, they could, learn on their own, figure things out on their own, they don't have to wait for the parent to tell them to a mitzvah. Can, they do, once they're able to understand, they could try to do it on their own. And sometimes a minor does seem to be obligated. There are certain cases where we see where a minor does seem to be obligated in doing certain mitzvahs, and that is text number 8. I'll let you read it.
Yeah, do you correct the child if they're, you said not if they're wrong, but what about as an adult? Does an
I'm saying not
adult
to
to
correct, I'm saying
adult?
like there's no like Torah punishment for a child, is what I was saying. That's what I mean.
So
when I'm saying
after,
obligated.
after you're like 13, if you said the wrong blessing or whatever, or
Yeah, that's not really like a punishment, but like, yeah, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash and times of the Holy Temple, if a person did certain things
incorrectly,
or certain things like, then they
They
got
correct them.
certain types of punishments. But-
really? It wasn't
but-
on the
Even if but even if they were trying to do it right
That's not what I'm
and
saying.
didn't know that it was wrong.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean.
Like,
Okay, it's
it's like a
all-
Okay, okay.
Then
okay,
it
it's
comes
all
in-
off. Let's say, so, for example, I'm trying to think about something that was like big, right? Let's say someone murdered someone, right? As a child, they don't have the any type of what's it called, consequence in a way. Obviously they have to be taught right, but they're not obligated, meaning
Okay.
it's not like they're not like responsible in the same way that an adult is responsible. Like, right, there's what's it called, juvenile court and regular court, right? So the same idea. A child, you are trying to, so that's what I
really-
meant.
Okay,
Okay.
that's really extreme. I was talking about someone who
No, if you say
who
the
wrote-
wrong bracha,
who
no
wrote the
no one's
wrong
standing over you with
bracha.
like what's it called?
That's just a.
Yeah,
It's just a correction,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a teacher.
Yeah, yes.
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter
that's
to
not-
me.
that's not a big deal.
Okay. When two people eat together, each person recite grace after meals by himself. If one knows how to recite grace and the other does not, the one who knows should recite the grace out loud, and the other person should recite Amen after each blessing. In this manner, the one who doesn't know the prayer fulfills his obligation. A son may recite grace for his father.
This is very interesting because we just said that a minor can't really include a adult, in his mitzvah, but there are opinions, including Maimonides, that says, Yvette's phone fell off, so she doesn't even hear this, that if the child knows the Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, and the father doesn't, the child should say it for the father.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's see. Text 9. Hey, the Rebbe questioned this. How is this possible? Sylvia, you can go for it.
It's puzzling. How can we suggest an obligation rests on a minor, even by rabbinic standards, if the minor lacks maturity? As a Talmud phrases it, an obligation for a minor.
Okay, so yes, sometimes a child has to take a role in Torah or mitzvahs that's like in a way that's an obligation. So he learns Torah because his father obligated to teach him, but there are some mitzvahs that he helps a person like obligate to fulfill. So because he is doing what his father is telling him, he's like responding to this enough to the like training that his father's giving him. He's taking the role in a mitzvah of educating a child. Okay, so there are sometimes mitzvahs that there is one person who's obligated in it, but somebody else is a partner in that mitzvah, is helping doing that mitzvah, and so without that person being included in the mitzvah can't be fully done.
Right.
Okay, so let's read 9b. I think is going to explain that a little bit more. Eileen, are you good to read?
Sure. Okay, let's understand the role and part the minor plays in the mitzvah of education. He is not just an actor without whom the father wouldn't be able to fulfill his father's mitzvah of education. Rather, the minor is the subject of the mitzvah of education, as the mitzvah is for the minor to gain practice. So, inasmuch as the father's mitzvah is to educate the child to perform all mitzvot, a sense of responsibility automatically lands on the minor, and that renders the minor a responsible party. In other words, the father is obligated to educate the child to perform mitzvot, though the minor's mitzvah performance is an outgrowth of the father's obligation. It is the act of the mitzvah performed by the minor that carries out the command. As such, the minor is rendered a responsible party, so much so that the minor is able to discharge an adult's obligation in certain situations. I guess when the child is 13, for sure, he's considered an adult.
Correct. So once the child's 13, then he's obligated on his own.
Yeah.
In the
Then-
Jewish law,
Yeah,
not in the secular law,
no secular laws.
secular.
No, but we're
oh.
talking about Jewish law. Talking about Jewish
Yeah,
mitzvahs. Yeah. So another example of someone who's a partner in a mitzvah, but they're not obligated, so to say, in that mitzvah, is the mitzvah to have children is really on the man, not on the woman. But obviously, the man can't have a child without a woman, right? So it's her, she's agreeing to that mitzvah, and she's a participant in that mitzvah, but she is not the obligated. So yes, she gets a reward for doing that for having children, but it's technically not her obligation. Yeah.
That's weird.
No, it's good.
It's good, yeah. So first of all,
The
it's
man
a
is
few things.
obligated,
The
but the
woman has a
woman
nat-
carries
usually-
it, carries the baby.
The
We don't-
woman has a
if you
natural
don't have one, it's
instinct.
fine, you didn't sin. Whereas if a man doesn't have one, it's a sin.
Right, so
Yes,
that
but boy
pushes the
and
man
girl.
to get married and
Yeah.
have a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to a
Uh-huh.
woman who will be more naturally inclined to
And
want
even
to do
though it's
that.
good because women only have this small window to have
Right.
them.
Yeah.
So then if it was like, oh, it's a sin, like we
Or
only
she
have those so
can't.
many years until.
But not just
we
that,
can do
it right, it's especially in today's day and age, it pushes somebody like, yes, I need to get married and have, I can't just play around, I can't just have fun, I can't just, wait, I need to be serious about my life. Yes, obligation. Okay, anyway,
What other obligations do men have?
so an
They
example.
have a lot more.
I mean, I'm
Wait,
saying, I know they do, but that has to, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's another class.
Yeah, they have an obligation to answer to their wife's needs, her sexual needs, yes.
That's in the ketubah.
Yeah, the woman doesn't have that.
And
too much.
in providing,
Yeah.
I mean.
Anyway,
all
so
right.
example,
Sorry, I
another
get into
example
all this stuff.
of this idea of someone who's a participant in something, but they're not really in
I know.
charge or responsible or
I know.
obligated, is let's say you have let's say someone who's like producing a movie, right? And they might need certain actors, or let's say here's an example of a child actor, but even not a child actor, even an adult actor. That actor is not responsible for the movie, they just have one small part. But if that actor doesn't do exactly what the producer tells them to do, or say the lines they're supposed to say, the director, the producer, whatever's movie is not gonna happen, or not gonna happen right? So actually there was whatever, there's one of the women who are in our sometimes in our class, I don't understand how to talk. Anyway, so she produced some like movies, and she told me she had this issue because today's like young people are like, oh, I'm not gonna say that line, or I don't think it should be done this way. And like, hello, you're just the actor, you're just the cameraman, you're not the person who's like
Wow.
deciding how the movie what should be, what the
The
movie's about.
director.
Exactly.
Uh-huh,
Wow.
uh-huh.
So right, so if all people don't play their part, but it's not like their obligation, it's not their thing that they're doing, so they're just one little piece in the puzzle. Okay, anyway,
Uh-huh.
so what we see from all this is how Judaism
What
looks
is it now?
at.
What's that saying?
Not a clock, is it?
No, it's just someone pushing something.
good.
Okay, what we see from this is how
You're-
Judaism looks
you're
at Jewish
illegal.
education, okay?
No, it's for my parking, I have my permit instead of Suri's permit.
Right,
Oh.
you numbered.
It's number
Two?
2,
Oh,
it's
you're
just not
fine.
the right letter.
You're fine, you're fine. Okay.
You-
So in Jewish education, it's not just a preparation for adulthood. It's not just a preparation for when they are older in life. It's not just about the training. It's very, very important that a child gets a full Jewish education, fully understands what they're supposed to do. But it's that they become part of a mitzvah. They play a part. They're a responsible party, right, in the fulfillment of a mitzvah. They need to get a personal connection to Hashem. So by them doing these mitzvahs, even if they're not obligated, it's not just, okay, so for later they'll know what they're supposed to do, but they themselves start to build a connection with Hashem. They themselves start to build a connection with mitzvahs. So it's really important, and they are part of the mitzvah. They're like included. It's not just like, okay, don't worry, when you're 12, we'll deal with that, or something like that. Okay, so let's read text number 10. The Rebbe explains this. I can go back to Shana. Yeah.
The only way to ensure that a Jewish child assumes their own identity and creates a personal connection with the mitzvah is if they are properly educated about them. This is in line with our discussion here, namely that the mitzvah of education renders the minor a responsible party.
Okay, so a child isn't just the parents' like little trinket, you know, they will behave, do whatever, however, you know, you're just gonna play the part, but a child has to have their own Jewish identity. So many people today, they have this issue is where, right, they want their child to be so Jewish or want their child to like know this, but not get too involved or be like this, like that, or want their, and then, oh my goodness, why is my kid not, you know, not understanding what it means to be Jewish, or how can my kid want to go and have, you know, to their friend and eat not kosher, or, you know, or whatever it is. They want their child to be just how they want them to be, but they're not giving their child their own like Jewish pride, their own Jewish identity. And that is why the child needs to do mitzvahs on their own so they can create that. So it's not really about the parent's image. It's about listening, and it's not about listening to the parent, and then decide, okay, I'm rebelling against my parents push Judaism down my throat, I'm not gonna, you know, do it, or whatever it is. But it's about them creating their own connection with Hashem. So it's a child's story. Let them create their own path and their own story. And that is the answer why Sphira, why the counting of the Omer, the counting during the time of Pesach and Shavuos is so important. The receiving of the Torah is so important that we make a bracha every day in anticipation for it. So every day when we count the Sphira, we make the bracha, we make the blessing, because it's such an important thing to be anticipating for the receiving of the Torah. And so the same thing with our own, so we're like making this connection on our own to the giving of the Torah. So the same thing, a child is doing these mitzvahs when they're younger, so they're making this connection. So when they become bar bat mitzvah, they have their own connection. They really have a feeling and everything towards Judaism and towards Torah learning. So now we're going to read a few different texts of different things the Rebbe speaks about Jewish education. I just want to point out also is that if not everyone here has their own children, even supporting Jewish education or facilitating it or being involved in Jewish education is also a really big mitzvah. So if you don't have your own child, you can do something in the merit of you know, something that's connected to Jewish education. So text number 11. I don't know.
Want me to read it?
Okay, but the only thing that not the people on the
Okay.
computer can hear you. That's why I didn't want you to come closer. I don't mind, but I didn't call you because
Okay. Sadly, many parents worry about their children's material concerns, food, clothing, toys, and the like. Whereas when it comes to to other things, such as all important concerns, that their child grow up as the proper mensch, they don't pay as much attention. Whether it is because of financial concerns or other matters, and they rely on the fact that their child will get everything they need from school. It is regarding such an attitude and that the Torah stresses and that the party primarily responsible for the child's education is his or her parents. The school is only the parent's agent in this mission. As such, even after the parents send their child off to school, the responsibility remains on the parents' hands and shoulders.
no, it's one little paragraph, right?
Yeah, where?
Towards
Next
the
page.
show.
Okay. Oh, of course, the children need schooling. However, it is not enough. The parents must do whatever they can to educate their own children.
Okay, so that is very interesting point.
Right?
And now text number 12. So that's a
Educating children or students along the proper path requires a lot of hard work. Even if one has dutiful children or students for whom one word is enough to get them into line, the educator must not make the mistake of thinking that their job is done. Even in such situations, the educator must invest and work hard at their job to the degree that the Torah can label it hard work.
Okay. And text number 13, another interesting point. Shelley, we'll let you do this one.
Okay. Parents' primary dedication ought to be to provide their children with a robust Jewish education. Parents should be committed to raising children who are pious, God-fearing, and students of the Torah. This will bring both parties lasting joy. When parents decide to commit their energy to providing their child with nice clothing so that he or she can be the best dressed kid in the neighborhood, well, such joy only lasts a day, a week, a month, or maybe even a year. But thereafter, when the child matures, it becomes obvious that he or she was deprived of true joy that could have lasted their entire life.
Wow, that's true. So yeah, so no, it was a big problem today, especially here in LA. I find like more than like say in other cities is that people from very traditional homes that don't send their kids to Jewish school, you know, obviously one thing is they say it's too expensive. Another thing they say is like they feel like they're not gonna get a good education, although usually the Jewish school, the kids that graduate from there, right, they get into great college if that's what they're wanting, if that's what they want to get into, whatever it is. But it's really important for us, all of us, to have the advocates and to speak to people, that about how important it is for their kids to go to Jewish school, and stuff like that. Because it is a big problem.
Well, even the Jewish schools now, like Claudia, her two kids, they were so woke. It was such a
Well,
different.
between like like an Orthodox school or just like a Jewish school? It's like it has to be a Torah. Like my family used to always say Torah true school, meaning a school that actually teaches the Jewish, ethics.
Well,
Jewish
I guess not then.
No, because some signing there. Well,
Right.
Very sad what's happening in this world.
Yeah.
Yes, that's for sure.
Mashiach now.
It's like I have like people who come from like other cities where kids were in Jewish school. Some reason they come to California, it's like not the in thing, to send them to Jewish school. Like, oh, we're paying so much for our house, right, or for our cars, so their money is that's where the priority is, and then their priority is not in the education, which is like, and they think they're gonna, if they just fail and like this and like that, and you get it, and it's a really, really big problem. And I see it because I have the Hebrew school and stuff, summer camp, and people would if I think if they were in New York, they'd be in a Jewish school or
Right.
Yeah, and especially like you said today with the schools
With the
are
work.
teaching what they're
much.
giving. Yeah,
It's a sin.
actually that's a short class. Okay, so now we can all hang out and talk. Let me just.
Should I make some hot tea for anybody?
Do you want to have tea?
What is it?
No, I'm good.